Welcome back to this season of Mission Control. Typically, we really focus on talking with nonprofit leaders and executive directors about their journey. However, this season, we're going to flip the script and go a little bit internal and talk about the control of the mission of UnoDeuce Multimedia as we celebrate 25 years of doing business in the nonprofit and small business community. And I do get asked a lot about how did I get started in this? What path did you take? I mean, what was the thought process in developing a business that really skews towards the creatively unique? And, I decided to start this season off with talking with one of the key people, actually probably the key person to set me on this path to create UnoDeuce Multimedia into the form that it is. And that is with Dave Ellingson. And I'd like to bring him on. There he is, Dave Ellingson, who was my mentor and boss and instructor, whatever you want to call it, all these things along my journey. But first of all, let's just start off with, who are you, Dave? What are you doing?
Well, that's a great question. First of all, thank you, Paul, for the invitation to have this conversation, and congratulations on 25 years. Very proud of you and your company and the effort and the mission that you have. So it's an honor to be a part of, and the seeds that were planted long ago are sprouting, and very happy for what's happened in your life. But now, how do I describe myself? Well, at the moment, I'm in my third act. I don't like the word retirement. I'm not drawing a paycheck per se from either being a pastor or being a professor. I'm in my third act, I've become the paddle pilgrim. And the paddle pilgrim is my adventures kayaking around the world, and then writing books, and then producing films. And I got to let you know, I was back in the Midwest this weekend, and my film Coming Home, Kayaking the Fjords of Norway, won the top award for a short documentary at the Farm to Film Fest in Washington, Iowa, near Des Moines. So I love adventures. I love being outdoors, and that provides an opportunity to tell stories, which is really what your mission is, to tell stories. And way back when, the way we connected was I got a grant to develop a project called Evergreen Youth TV. I was seeing how nonprofits, churches, organizations were struggling to get their story, their mission out there. And I got a grant, a nice grant that allowed me to bring together gifted young people from across the country. And you were one of them. And you came to Seattle, and we had a 2-week video program where the first week was boot camp. Basically, you learned video production skills, working in teams, which was very important to the philosophy. And then we teamed and paired you with nonprofit organizations that needed their story told. And so you interviewed them. You all learned in your team how to do interviews, how to listen well, and then how to tell those stories. And for our final banquet, you then edited. For our final banquet, we gathered and we had rough cut stories from these organizations. And it was just great fun. And that's kind of what you do in many ways. And so what we tried to train folks, young people in, was to be able to help organizations tell their stories. And you've done that you went on to college, of course, and got a lot more training, and then created your company. And our paths have crossed many times over the years, which has been just great fun. And as I said, I'm very proud of what you're doing and very impressed with your organization. And so congratulations.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And that was actually, you answered one of my questions right off the bat, because we were going to start with Evergreen Youth Television, but, because it was such a unique situation, and one that I kind of lucked into, because me being chosen was kind of a serendipitous situation, because I at first didn't want to do it, but my mom's like, "Hey, this looks like a great opportunity," and
Yeah.
wouldn't you know, I did it and I was selected. I'm like, "Oh, okay," but I liked how you described the nuts and bolts of how it came about or how it worked. But talk about how it was envisioned. How did you come up with this idea? I mean, this is the early 90s. I mean, television, or excuse me, video equipment in and of itself is not cheap at that point in time. Not like it was later on, but how did you come up with this idea? How did you come up with? Because I really liked how it was framed when I got there.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, it was a really interesting time, as you say. It was right in the cusp, or that threshold between analog and digital. And the camp was held at Pacific Lutheran University in Tacoma, Washington, and they had just recently built a big, very beautiful, up-to-date analog studio. They had put tons of money into it. I knew the two guys well, who did the video work for this university, and I also knew a number of key storytellers who were videographers, and so we were switching from analog, and we were actually able to go with digital, learning it as it was literally coming out and becoming available. And the big old cameras we used we used for a while. But again, the cameras were changing, the editing equipment, and it was becoming democratized. Really, it was becoming available to everybody, and we see the fruit as well as the pits of that out there in the real world these days. And so we were glad to do that. I was able to work with some very, very talented people. These two guys at PLU helped. We actually got PLU students who were in video training to sort of be mentors and dorm guides, right? They were there. And then a good friend of mine locally, Mary Peterson, who I want to mention, who was a freelance. She had trained at PLU, had worked for World Vision. She worked with local TV stations, and she was able to bring in, along with the national staff of our church, the Lutheran church, skilled people. I wasn't the skilled person. I got the money. I was the producer, right?
Yep.
And I was able to bring in the people who knew what they were doing. And we had just a wonderful time together. It wasn't just about video, it was about building relationships. As you recall, when we first started, we didn't put cameras into your hands for a while. We really wanted you to get to know each other, to see that it's a team effort. You actually had to do a silent movie or a silent film, because one of the key messages we wanted to communicate was it's less about the words and it's more about it is video. It is visual, and how can we tell the story visually and add words as necessary? So I was gathered by great people, and of course, that's the key, isn't it? Gathering good people and working as a team.
No, I think that it worked well. And in fact, these lessons, working in that small team uh, back then really heightened my awareness of how a small team can work, and using that dynamic. And actually, it's a dynamic that I still use today. And how we train our interns in turn as well within that. But I know that you didn't come from the television or video world, but you saw a power within that medium. In fact, you still, honestly, right off the top of the bat, right at the top of the podcast, you were talking about the fact that you just had a short film get an award. So you're seeing the power of motion imagery. What was it about it at that time that you're like, I think this is the key to communication? So I mean, is that what it was? Was it just that, or what was your what is your thought process about going into video?
Well, it's probably a couple things. I think the first thing is I'm a visual learner. We all have different learning styles, and a picture is worth 1,000 words or even more. And that was particularly true for me. You could tell me something, but if you showed me something, I was far more likely to. And the truth is, tell a person they'll remember a certain amount, show them even more, and then have them do it. In other words, have some kind of action resulting from it. They remember it, and it translates into action, which is really important. So for me, if I was going to get as a little kid growing up, I had difficulty paying attention, right? And if you showed me a picture, or if you got me to do something, I was far more apt to get good grades, which made my parents happy. I think beyond being a visual person, a visual learner, I think the other thing that was probably key for me is I'm a storyteller. I mean, I love to write. And on the films I'm producing now, I get out, I do something, I paddle something, I experience something, I'm taking notes, right? Do that location work, right? And you set up the situation. My journals lead to books, and the book leads to a script, and all along I'm shooting, and because it's democratized, I can get with my GoPro camera, I can get with my phone. Literally, the quality of our phones and the various kinds of public tools are so good that, I mean, maybe it's not going to be Hollywood good, but it's going to be darn good, and it'll tell the story well. So the only one I haven't learned yet is drone work. And I have friends that are excellent drone pilots. And do you remember M.R. Fletchall, Michael
Yep.
Ryan?
Yep.
Well, he was one of the first to head out to Hollywood from your group or the early groups, and he's now a certified drone pilot. And Hollywood calls him when they want good drone work. And so the technology advances, but now it's accessible to everybody. And TikTok is a great or not so great example of how everybody can be a producer, right?
That is true. That is true. I mean, I always say everybody has a story, but
That's right.
not everybody has a good storyteller. So
Yeah, that helps. That helps. Yeah.
it does help a lot. It does help a lot. So when you when I went out, when I was a camper, I guess the best way you put it
Yep.
is 'cause it was a camp. I came back out about 7, 8 years later,
Hmm.
work in the organization,
Yep.
and it was kind of cool but at that time when I came back, it was a full year. It was operating like the entire year, even though the camp was only 2 weeks or 10 days or whatever it was at that point in time. I know we had to shrink it a little bit at one point, but yeah, it was a full year. What made you choose to create an arm of the nonprofit into a revenue generating aspect?
We wanted to update our equipment, which is not cheap or inexpensive, and so part of it was to generate income, but equally important was to provide a training opportunity for people like you and the folks you got, Sarah, who you got to work with. I mean, I'm an educator, so internships, and you probably remember this from college, and you're seeing this with your own interns. You learn the most again by doing. So I created a 501c3, a nonprofit, which is actually rather easy to do. And then with the few dollars I had left from the grant, part of it with the grant money was running out, and I provided a form of cheap employment. Did we actually pay you, or did we provide housing? I can't even remember.
Well, the first year was more of an internship type deal
Yeah,
where you provided housing and a stipend, but then we we were getting more work after
right,
that. I was the first full-time employee.
right, right. Yeah,
Yeah.
we were learning as we were going, Paul, as you remember
Yeah.
well, but we were a learning team. I mean, I didn't have all the answers, and you guys were in many ways out in the field, and I was sometimes generating clients. I mean, our offices literally were right next to each other, and so we were able to work together. And one of the things that I've done now with my own filmmaking and with my books is if I my one of my daughters, my four daughters, three of them are teachers. One of them got a degree from PLU in marketing, and she's a social media expert. And I think if I wasn't a professor slash pastor, I would have been a salesman.
Yep.
And if you got ideas, and this is part of where that nonprofit world comes in. You want to help people tell their stories because the nonprofit world is a challenging world to keep afloat, doing good things for people. There's often not a lot of money in that, and I'm not complaining, but I'd rather do good and make less than be a bad person making tons of money, but we won't go there in this conversation.
That's fair. That's fair. That's for a different podcast.
Yeah,
Not
that
ours.
right. Yeah, exactly.
No, I mean, but that's the other thing is like you empowered me because in the middle of that year or just over a year where I was the first full-time employee, you went on sabbatical.
That's right.
And so it was like, you're like, I have to go on sabbatical. So you have the reins. And
Yes.
I was like, okay, what do I do? so,
Yeah,
so it's just part of that whole functionality of learning as you go. And I
that's
learned
right.
quite a bit because I had what was good about that was the fact that we were in this building with it was the regional office at that time
Right.
um, for the ELCA, Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. For those that don't know, um, it was, and so with that, the administrative staff was really helpful to
Yes.
me because the financial staff oversaw our budget or
Yep.
oversaw our income, and
Yep.
so as we're able to make sure that people were getting paid and bills were getting paid, and but then
Right.
also the executive, he was a good mentor while you were gone, and I leaned
Hmm.
on him a little bit. Um,
Hmm.
but it was just good people to be in there to help guide us in some way, shape, or form because
Right.
you had this responsibility as part of your career to take this time off, and
Yeah.
I think that one aspect has been really told me that this is something I could possibly do. I never in a world, never in my mind did I imagine starting and then running a business, much less for 25 years, but running a business just for a month. But that really let me know that I could do at least, the leadership part of it, and then I can learn the rest of it as I go,
Yep.
because
Yep.
there's still aspects. So that was just one of those things that always stuck with me. Is it's like, oh, okay. So I was leading staff meetings. I was leading. I was doing. It was just interesting. I mean, I'm 25 years old, and getting ready for board meetings, getting ready for staff meetings, doing all this stuff, and just I'm not even contemplating. I'm just doing. I'm
Yeah.
not even.
Yeah.
It's not even registering. This is almost like this is what I have to do. I don't have. I don't really have a a chance to think about it. So it's just it was interesting. It was a great learning experience in that. And what I also liked was, the clientele that we worked with was just really struck a chord with me. And that I was like, these are the stories that I want to tell the rest of my life. And so that's what I did. And fortunately, when I moved back to Michigan, what I didn't realize was that it is a hotbed, if you want to call it a hotbed, of nonprofit organizational work. It's the
Mm-hmm.
United States in organizational philanthropy and all this other stuff. And I was like, oh, I guess this is a true calling. But neither here nor there. But it's just, yeah.
Well, no, I think you make a really good point, Paul, because when you call it a hotbed, there is so much invisible good work being done.
Mhm.
When you think of public media and money, people can get their messages out there and they can be good messages, but what the nonprofit world does is it helps people in a host of ways, and there are countless organizations doing that good work, sometimes just getting by, sometimes thriving. But for you to tell their stories puts them on the map even in an even better way and allows them to help more people. And that isn't that our whole purpose in being on earth, to love your neighbor, to care for people. And I mean, you're really at the heart of that. And so, if you had been around in Jesus' time, Paul, I was thinking about this the other day, you would have had your camera and you would have been interviewing and saying, now, Jesus, you were saying this about that.
Mhm.
I don't think I understand what you meant. And, wouldn't that have been a fun project to have? There was Paul the apostle, but what can you imagine being Paul the disciple
Right.
and
Right.
covering the Jesus beat?
I mean, but that's basically, I think that's what Paul did posthumously, but
Yes.
but I mean,
Yes.
that's the wild thing, because that's exactly it. It's all about finding the why.
Yeah.
Why did you choose to do it this way?
Right.
And that's the whole crux of it. And so now going into, yeah, I mean, you alluded to it at the beginning or at the top of our podcast, but we're celebrating 25 years as this organization that stemmed from an idea that you had
Mhm.
back in 1990, 91, or whatever it was. I don't even know. And so, how are you feeling about this continuation of your work in a
Well,
different
like I
form,
said at
in a
the
different
start,
state?
I'm really proud of you. I'm proud of Sarah. I mean, a lot of us, we have a Facebook page, and
Mhm.
we went to EYTV, right? And a
Yep.
number of people keep posting. I mean, the biggest thing is just I feel blessed and I'm grateful. We have people who have become videographers or video storytellers like yourself and Sarah, and Doug Burton is an award-winning novelist.
Mhm.
We have a bunch of pastors. Tom Glasso paddled on the Mekong River with me 3 years ago, and I'm still working on telling his story of being a product of the Vietnam War.
Mm.
And that story that I produced the video on the Mekong River kayak adventure, I've entered in a film festival in Laos, north of Cambodia, and I'm hoping it's accepted, because if it is accepted, I'm going to go back in December and paddle another stretch of the river. And Tom, one of your classmates, one of the people who came at age 15 from Minnesota, he's going to join me back there. And part of our adventure, beyond just the friendship, and he's gone on to be a Lutheran pastor. Part of the adventure is to find his mom.
Mm.
He's
Mm.
found his dad through DNA
Oh,
and
wow.
been reunited with his dad. It wasn't a soldier, it was a Pulitzer Prize winning author
Wow.
covering the Vietnam War 50, 60 years ago. Hasn't found his mom, but he and I, when we were together the last time, we went looking for his mom, and we haven't given up, and he's now 50, about age 50. He's not quite sure, because he spent the first 9 years of his life in an orphanage before he was adopted by this family from Minnesota. So I'm just proud of all of you and pleased to see what you're doing. And I'm having fun telling stories. I think we're kind of all in this together. When I showed my film on paddling the fjords of Norway back in the Midwest this last weekend, we were all sitting around a table. There were 120 submissions, 20 were selected, 5 of us won best of, but we were all telling stories that need to be told. So I'm still hanging out with some of them. Were very young. Some of them, I was probably the geezer in the group, right? And but we were applauding each other and saying, "Bravo! Keep telling the stories that need to be told." And I don't think there was a professional videographer who made a living doing what our group. It was an interesting mix of people, and so let's just keep telling the stories that need to be told.
Well, absolutely, and that's how we look at it, because we tell a ton of stories,
Yeah.
and it's fun. And I mean, I just look back at those days fondly of where you put me onto the video realm. For the simple fact is, I was interested in being on stage or being in front of the camera at that time, and I'll never forget when I was having trouble at college, really breaking through in the theater realm. I got that letter that we won that award from the camp for a
Yep.
PSA we did on the side. It wasn't one of our regular assignments. We just did this PSA on the side,
Yep.
and it won this award. And I was like, I thought right then and there when I got that letter, I said, okay, maybe in front of the camera isn't where I'm supposed to be. And the day after I got that letter, I walked over to the Department of Communications and changed my major and never looked back.
I
And
never heard that story before.
yeah,
That's wonderful to hear.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's one of those things where I don't, well, I mean, there's another story that I wanted to get to about how I ended up there to work. That was another whole wild thing, but I don't have the fortitude really to ignore the universe when it's telling me to go do something. I
Yeah.
I just go do it. I was like,
Good.
if I'm supposed to be here, it's not just a gut feeling, it's something that's putting me in that path for some reason, and I just don't
Yeah.
fight it. So it's
Well, you use the word calling. That's language that Martin Luther talked about. We all have callings. And I like to talk about that with my students. It's not just jobs. In fact, it should be way deeper than jobs. We have a calling, our gifts, the intersection of our gifts and the world's needs. That's our calling. And you have listened and not always ended up doing what you were, in fact, often ended up doing something different. I mean, I have a line I use, God writes straight with crooked lines,
hmm
right?
hmm
It's
hmm
like, oh, I didn't plan that. And then this happened. It was like, whoa, what fun. And you're a
yeah.
great example of that, Paul.
And it's just worked out, and it's worked out the best for me. But that brings us to our time, Dave. I really appreciate you coming on here and telling some stories like you do. And if anybody wanted to check out your film and where things are there, where can people find it?
Well, my website is paddle-pilgrim.com, and on it are my books, my films, and my podcasts, as well as I've now had for a year a Substack column that I write almost every week. So all those things are there, and I do a lot of public speaking. So if people either in my area here in the Northwest or by Zoom like we're doing here want me to do a presentation, I'm available. My third act, I'm not completely booked, but I'm keeping busy, and that makes me happy.
Good. Well, thanks again, Dave. I really appreciate all that you've done for me and for this organization. Thank you very much.
Congratulations, Paul.
And thank you all for tuning in to this episode of Mission Control. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever, and leave a review if you like this episode. And don't forget, we're going to be back in 2 weeks, because this is the start of this new season. We'll be back in 2 weeks talking with one of my first clients outside of the Lutheran realm, one of our first nonprofit clients that wasn't related to the Lutheran world. So stay tuned for that. And if you have any questions for me, you can message me at missioncontrol@UnoDeuce.com. Thank you all once again for listening, and we'll see you again in the Control Center.